Thank you, Program Director. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Let me take this opportunity to welcome you all this morning to this important conversation. But let me first acknowledge the Honorable Minister for Basic Education. Also acknowledge our distinguished sponsors who are here, particularly the European Union. But let me also stand on the protocol that has already been established by the program director there. We are meeting on a very cold Monday morning, firstly, but also we are meeting during the Youth Month, because as we know, June is the Youth Month in our country. So it is only befitting that during the month of the young people, we should be reflecting on the issues that are affecting young people in our country. And we know that one of the issues that are really a challenge for our young people is the problem of skills, the problem of youth unemployment that many people are attributing to inadequate skills that youth depart with, particularly when they leave our sector, which is basic education. So we have a responsibility as the Department of Basic Education to ensure that we give our young people skills that will enable them to have access to employment, that will enable them to be innovative and to be critical thinkers. That is the responsibility that we have. So many questions have been posed to us to say that in the midst of high youth unemployment, what is it that we are doing as a sector to try and mitigate that and to try and address the problem? So we did not have the luxury as the sector to just sit back and do nothing. So we had to respond and to respond effectively. And so there has been a number of programs that we have been able to put in place as part of that response. I'm sure you are all aware that the department has been busy with the implementation of the Three Streams Model Program, which is basically aimed at expanding opportunities for young people to try and make sure that we expand their career paths so that they can be able to have access to various opportunities to employment. We have also introduced in our sector the General Education Certificate, the GEC certificate, so that if it happens that the young person can exit the system and not be able to reach grade 12, they should at least have evidence that they have been through schooling and that they can also have access to other opportunities. But most importantly, we have introduced what we will be discussing during this conference, which is entrepreneurship education, which is basically about ensuring that our young people are innovative, that our young people become problem solvers, that our young people become innovative. And that's a very critical skills that they need to have. And our entrepreneurship program that focuses on entrepreneurship, employment, and education, what we call EQUIPT, is meant to ensure that our young people are equipped to be able to deal with the challenges that they face. But of course, for us to be able to win this battle, we cannot work alone. We cannot work alone as the Department of Basic Education. We need partnerships. We have to work together with other departments. So interdepartmental collaboration then becomes critical in this case. But the private sector also has got a critical role to play because then these young people need to have access to opportunities where they can learn on the job. So the issue of work integrated learning also then becomes critical. So it's important that as the private sector we are able to work together with us so that we can understand our vision as a department, you can understand our strategies, and you can also be able to locate where your role is going to be in terms of promoting this important endeavor. So this conference has been convened so that we can have a conversation as a nation, as different stakeholders, about how are we going to work together to ensure that we are able to achieve this important ideal. And one of the objectives, as you are aware, is to try and come up with a policy that will clearly identify the roles that each and every one of us are expected to play. And so we hope that when we leave at the end of this 3-day engagement, we will be having clear indications about what each one of us is expected to do and what kind of collaborative effort are we going to engage in. As part of the challenges in our work has been that the work around entrepreneurship is done in different sections and units in bits and pieces. It's not coordinated. And as you are aware that we are working under very tough fiscal environment. So it's important that the little resources that we have, we need to use them effectively. We need to eliminate unnecessary duplications, that we are able to collaborate with each other so that we can increase the impact of the work that we are doing. So we are very excited to have you here this morning, and we are looking forward to engaging with you, to sharing with you, and so that you can also share with us your own experiences in the spaces where you are, and you can be able to give us critical advice in terms of what is the path that we need to take in order to strengthen the work that we have already commenced. So you are welcome, and we are looking forward to your engagement throughout the 3 days. With those words, I want to welcome you and thank you for your attendance. Thank you very much.
DDG, can I just ask you to remain on stage, please, as we now welcome the Minister for the address, her address in this session. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I also ask us to rise, please, as we receive the Minister for her address. Minister Stewart.
Yes, we want to appreciate really for our Minister who have, she doesn't miss these critical events. And we are glad that she has been able to set aside time to be with us this morning. Our Minister may be new in the education sector, but she's actually a veteran when it comes to issues of the public. We know She's been a shadow minister for health, so she is not new to the space. She might be new to education, but I'm sure we all agree that she has really acclimatized herself in the sector very quickly. And I think that she's pushing all of us to make sure that we really achieve our objectives within the sector. So let's put our hands together once more and welcome the honorable.
Thank you very much, everybody, and a very good morning from the very cold Boksburg this morning. Program Director, our esteemed ambassadors, the Ambassador of the European Union and our international partners, colleagues from the Department of Basic Education, the Department of Higher Education and Training, and the Department of Employment and Labor, leaders from civil society, the private sector, and generally the education community. Ladies and gentlemen, a very, very good morning. Firstly, I think let me begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to the European Union for this collaboration, your generous contribution to making this very important conversation happen today. This dialogue is critical, and as I often say to the team in the Department of Basic Education, that it's very, very important that we move dialogues and summits and conversations into action. And I truly believe that the conversation that we're going to be happening in the next 2 days, we're definitely going to be able to operationalize and get it into action. The reason being is because the moment really, really does call for it, and we are at a very critical place in our country. At the outset, I think let me state it quite plainly that South Africa's education system now carries a very heavy responsibility of preparing young people not only for the world of work as we know it today, but the world of work as it is becoming. It is also, of course, an acknowledgement that South Africa also sits with endemic unemployment. 7 out of 10 young people are without work. And I can tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, that is a national crisis. It is something that all of us in this room need to respond to. It is something that all of us in this room need to ask ourselves, what are we doing to resolve this crisis? Because I can guarantee you, no country can sustain these high levels of unemployment, because it will really start to unstitch the very fiber of our communities if we don't resolve the unemployment crisis in the country. And so then as an education system, we ask ourselves, yes, we may not be entrusted with fiscal policies. Yes, we may not be the ones who are at the heart of asking ourselves, how do we grow the economy? But yes, we may be wanting to grow the economy, but how do we become the conveyor belt of the future workforce of South Africa? How is our education system primed to such an extent that we are able to make sure that we are preparing young people for the world of work? Whether it is young people who will go on and go through to matric and go on to university and acquire university degrees, or whether it is young people who want to acquire skills. South Africa historically, and I think many of you may agree with me, that historically there has been a disjuncture around the understanding of what the importance of skills in our education system. For too long, there's been a premium that is held and a view that is held that if you don't go to university, that is actually the marker of success. And yet the numbers tell us a different story. That out of 100 learners who start school, only 14 of those qualify for university, and just 6 out of 100 will graduate within the first 6 years. So it tells you that there's clearly a massive disjuncture of our understanding of what the economy needs. And not every single person needs to be a severe and be a social scientist. I could only be a social scientist because that's what I could do. I was very bad with numbers. But ultimately, we've got to be a country that puts a lot of premium on skills acquisition. If you look at big economies, like German economy, for instance, where they're looking at how do they create learners from a very young age who are skills orientated, you can start to see that these are the economies that are thriving. These are the economies that have created very low unemployment rates. And so as a country, we need to also turn a corner and think about how do we inject the idea of skills development in our education system. And this is why programs like this are so absolutely critical, because it is part of that work that you'll be doing here for the next 3 days that will start to shape the conversation, not only in this room, but outside of this room, to say that we need young people who are skills orientated. But also, these are not just skills for today, these are the skills for the future. Of course, many people say to me, we've got fundamental problems, we still have infrastructure challenges, we still have children who cannot read for meaning. And I say, yes, absolutely. But the world is already having a conversation about how do we leverage the advent of artificial intelligence for the world of work in the future. We cannot leave South African children behind out of that conversation. So we have to, in tandem, be considering all of these things at the same time. And so this is why this program is so incredibly important. This policy dialogue is also not a side conversation about optional add-ons in the curriculum. I've been very clear that the curriculum as we know it is stable, and stable curricula is important. So what we're saying is we're not wanting to crowd the curriculum further. We're not saying we want to add additional subjects. We're saying, what do we have on offer already that we can augment, that we can make sure that even the learners who go to schools of skills, they're able to move between the Department of Higher Education and Training, DBE, with seamlessly between the two departments and able to acquire skills as and when they need them. But also we have to start thinking about how do we create not only job seekers, but innovators, job creators, people who are going to go on and be industry leaders. We can't do that if we are not already priming ourselves as policymakers about how do we make sure that the curriculum is responsive to that. And so our deliberations at this policy dialogue must align with our drive to improve, however, foundational literacy and numeracy. And the reason why, you may ask, you may say, this is about entrepreneurship. How does it really pertain to even the priority of numeracy and literacy? But ladies and gentlemen, we know the statistics and they're quite stark. And for me, all of these things are interconnected if you are looking at the education system in its entirety. It is important that while we are having these programs and these interventions, that we don't lose sight of the importance of the foundations of learning. If we don't get the foundations of learning right, these things will all not amount to the kind of returns we want to see. So we want to see 0 to 4-year-olds being able to read and being able to be acquainted with the skills of literacy and numeracy. Because we also know that the research shows us that a number of children in South Africa who get to grade 3 are actually only developmentally in grade 1. That a number of children who get to grade 4, by the time they turn the age 10, at least 8 out of 10 of them are said to not be able to read for meaning in any language. Now that's a literacy crisis. So you are sitting on your further education and training side with a skills deficit and a skills hole that you need to plug in, but also at the beginning of at the foundations of learning, you are also sitting with a literacy crisis. So as I said, that the moment is urgent and you've got to do all of these things at once, but we have to get the foundations of learning right, because we know that when children are well, they are able to read and read for meaning. They're able to take on more difficult subjects, maths, science, accounting, gateway subjects that are needed by the economy, that are needed by industry. So the work around literacy and foundational literacy is just as critical as asking ourselves, how do we get more learners to take on maths, science, and technology at a later age? The two are absolutely interconnected. You can't talk about a skills revolution if you're not talking about how do you fix your literacy crisis right at the foundations of learning. And of course, we know that we have an incredible opportunity because we have adopted and we've now taken over the function of early child development in South Africa. Now, for me, it's a massive opportunity because now, for the first time in our country, we start to look at a child from 0 all the way to 18. Because, of course, an education system is systemic. It's continuous. It shouldn't be broken down. And so I look forward to being able to do the work of strengthening the foundations of learning, but also taking on this kind of work around including skills in our offering in our schools. But we also must understand that we can accept that we can't teach entrepreneurship in a vacuum. Entrepreneurship in South Africa must be rooted in Ubuntu. A South African entrepreneur cannot just create profits. They must create a shared value for themselves and their communities, and they must create entrepreneurial ventures that serve the bottom of the pyramid and solve social issues. And this is why this policy dialogue is deliberately multi-sectoral. Government alone can't do it. We need business, we need civil society, we need educators, we need teacher unions, and the innovation of the ecosystem to work together. Breaking down these silos is what is going to really help us, because we'll break down the silos, we'll pool our resources, and we will be co-creating the solutions that we need. And so this gathering for me is more than just about transforming our collective awareness and mindset and our commitment to shaping our education system, but it's also about saying, how do we respond to the call of the day? And the call of the day is, how do we create a young person that is ready for work, a young person that can walk into a world of work, that can be impactful, and that can create a life of dignity for themselves. Because the crisis of unemployment, ladies and gentlemen, will be our undoing. So unless we really respond to that urgent call, we are not going to fix some of the things that are wrong with our country. And so for me, what does success look like? I want to conclude by saying the scale of the challenge is huge, but so is the opportunity. Africa is the youngest continent on earth, and by 2050 we are told that we will be the home to the world's largest working age population. So this demographic transition can only be a true asset if we make sure that we really infuse skills and education in our education systems. The difference between an education and a demographic dividend and simply a demographic incident is whether or not you invest in it so that you can reap the benefits. So let me leave you with this. Education is not only about preparing our youth for future education, training, and jobs. It is also about preparing them for life. It is about equipping them with the ability to adapt, to lead, to innovate, to contribute meaningfully to society, whether as employees, whether as entrepreneurs, or just as engaged citizens. In the spirit of Ubuntu and of Youth Month, let us work together to ensure that entrepreneurship is not just a privilege of the few, but the possibility of the many. The journey starts here today, and the future of our country depends on the work that we choose to do here for the next couple of days. Diabulele.
Let's give another round of applause till the minister makes her way to her seat. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for sharing your vision. You know, the words that you said, that should really remind all of us in this room why this gathering matters. You said, it is now time to prepare young people for the future of work. And you'd also said that this time is also happening in context of South Africa's worsening unemployment crisis. And Minister, you also correctly mentioned a country like Germany, who's using skills development to drive growth, which is actually perfect timing to hear the European perspective on how youth entrepreneurship is driving economic growth. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our next speaker, Her Excellency Ms. Sandra Kramer, who is the EU Ambassador to South Africa. She will talk to us about the EU's Education for Employability, E4E program, which has been a steadfast partner to the DBE in bringing entrepreneurship education to life on the ground. Ms. Sandra, please join us on stage.
Thank you, Program Director. Good morning, everybody. Morning. It's not too cold. It's okay. Gets worse tomorrow, I hear. I am very glad that you are having me here today, and I'd like to thank, of course, the Program Director, the Department of Basic Education for organizing the event, but most of all, and of course the DDG for introducing us, but most of all, of course, the Minister for being here, for your incredibly pointed intervention, and for supporting, which you described so well, the necessary actions to be taken on entrepreneurial learning and development. So it is a great pleasure to be here today. It's a topic of crucial importance for the European Union, both in our internal policies and our external policies. So I'm the ambassador of the European Union to South Africa, and let me start my intervention by explaining a little bit about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial spirits in the EU and what it means to us. The development of entrepreneurial capacity of European citizens and organizations has been a key policy objective for the European Union and its member states for many years. The first policy document on entrepreneurship dates from 2003. It was a green paper on entrepreneurship in Europe. And by 2006, the EU identified a sense of initiative and entrepreneurship as one of the key competences necessary for all members of a knowledge-based society which Europe was becoming. This was followed by a series of policy and legislation that kept the need to promote entrepreneurship education and entrepreneurial learning under the spotlight. And in 2016, we developed the Entrepreneurship Competence Framework. And that framework creates a shared understanding of knowledge, skills, and attitudes needed to become entrepreneurial. Crucially, these competences described in the framework are not necessarily linked to founding or running a company, but it refers to developing an entrepreneurial mindset, such as spotting opportunities, a vision, ethical and sustainable thinking, valuing ideas, motivation, perseverance, mobilizing resources, learning through experience, planning and management. And this is of crucial importance of today's topic, ladies and gentlemen. In order for entrepreneurship to take off, an entrepreneurial mindset needs to be developed. So why is this important to South Africa and why are we here? So I'd like to bring back these issues a bit closer to home and why entrepreneurship is at the core of our strategy as the European Union in South Africa. We had a recent summit in Cape Town in March 13, the European Union South Africa Summit, and our presidents endorsed an EU-South Africa investment plan. It's worth up to 4.7 billion euros, and that investment plan comprises of projects in the framework of our Global Gateway strategy, focusing on key value chains such as critical raw materials or green hydrogen, connectivity, and pharmaceuticals, vaccine production, for example. And these value chains are key to ensuring South Africa's strategic autonomy as a key global and regional actor to provide jobs and to foster economic growth. But how would we do that without a thriving private sector? Or without strong SMEs? Without entrepreneurs? Without young people developing an entrepreneurial mindset to be at the forefront of this economic development? And this is why, as the European Union, we place great emphasis on what we call the 360 support to these value chains that I mentioned. Skills developing, working with youth, CSOs, education sector, supporting SMEs directly, all to nurture the entrepreneurial mindset. So the European Union supports several departments. The Department of Basic Education, of course, the Department of, and this dialogue today is one of those support. Also the Department of Labour, where we mobilized and funded more than 10 vans that drive across the country and bring skills to people, how to set up a CV, how to write a motivational letter. The Department of Small Business Development, they are here today, where we've done a lot. Access to finance for SMEs, but also nurturing entrepreneurial skills. And the suggestion is, and I think that was also what the Minister said, is for these departments to work closely together. There is budget still available at National Treasury, and the word co-creation is important. In 2003, as I said, only 6 out of the 27 member states had a specific strategy for entrepreneurship education. Today, 99% of European businesses are small and medium-sized enterprises. These SMEs provide jobs to more than 85 million European citizens, and they're at the heart of innovation and economic growth. This didn't happen without political commitment and intentional policy and financial support. Our experience shows that entrepreneurship can be nurtured and that it has a direct impact on society. So once again, I'd like to thank you very much for having us, for organizing such an important dialogue. I look forward to hearing some of the tangible recommendations that arise. Let's move from dialogue to action. Thank you.
A continued round of applause for Ms. Sandra Kaba as she makes her way to her seat. Thank you so much for that presentation where you shared the European perspective on youth entrepreneurship. And I love that you said that it really comes down to developing an entrepreneurial mindset. And so it's pushing us closer to the conversation that we want to have today. But before we delve even deeper, let's learn some more about this E4E program. So our next speaker who's going to come up on stage is Mr. Andreas Schott from the E4E program. He will give us an understanding and a picture of how the program has evolved over time and where it is heading next. Please welcome Mr. Schott on stage.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much, Program Director, for giving us a chance to say a few words about the E4E, the Education for Employability program. I'm the team leader of the technical assistance team to the Education for Employability program, which is an EU-funded sector budget support program, which was basically designed in 2018 and implemented since late 2020. And although the financing agreement to this sector budget support program is coming to an end next month, there is still funding available at the National Treasury to continue with the implementation of the program. The overall objective of the E4E program is better employment prospects for South African youth, and that means that youth unemployment policy interventions in terms of design, targeting and ability must adequately address the needs of young labor market entrants as well as those of employers. The program is expected to support government efforts in improving quality of basic education, vocational training and job placement services from early childhood through to the teenage years until the acquisition of skills needed for the world of work. The E4E expectations are that the efforts are geared towards supporting a coherent and integrated approach towards improving the youth education value chain. The support is cross-departmental and is piloting and testing policies and actions through pilot projects implemented by the 3 departments contributing to the E4E program, that is the Department of Basic Education, of course, the Department of Higher Education and Training, and the Department of Employment and Labor. And these piloting should lead to improved design and implementation of sectorial policies and improve collaboration in critical policy areas for the prospects and employability and education of the youth. And our policy dialogue event is such a contribution, of course, because it will lead to sectorial policies that should affect the unemployment, or should improve the unemployment of the youth. During the first phase of the E4E program, the departments contributing to the E4E program, DBE, was putting stress and focus on the implementation of the three-stream model, implementing the academic, vocational and occupational pathways. The Department of Higher Education and Training looked at improving community employability services and improved career preparation and matching of skills. The Department of Employment and Labor looked at labor matching, the improvement of labor matching and placement services, in particular, as the EU ambassador had mentioned, through these mobile labor centers that made available the services of the public employment services also to communities that are difficult to reach. The second phase of the program, which started implementation in 2023, is looking at a more focused approach than in the first phase, and that more focused approach would be strengthening and consolidating the E4E Phase 1 program by creating a functional national career development system and by providing information, advice, guidance and counseling services that support the employability of citizens to transition effectively from education, training to work. During the second phase of the program, the three DIPs will each be responsible for a pillar of the project. The DBE will focus on the institutionalization of career development services under the E4E program support, and that is to pursue the establishment and institutionalization of career development services in the schooling sector. And this is to equip learners with the skills, knowledge and competencies that will inspire confidence needed for successful futures and sustainable livelihoods through entrepreneurship education, and to allow learners the opportunity of exploring diverse learning pathways and robust career development services which seek to empower learners to make informed choices, embrace their potential, and transition seamlessly from education to meaningful employment. The second pillar under the second phase of the E4E program will be implemented by the Department of Education and Higher Education and Training, and will focus on building a functional career development program and ecosystem. And that is to strengthen strategic leadership of the career development system by operationalizing strategic plans and frameworks developed in the first phase of the E4E program. And furthermore, to continue efforts towards building a functional career development ecosystem that utilizes viable ICT and resources mediated by capable and professionally practitioners doing the counseling and advice in career education, and to facilitate innovation and entrepreneurship development in piloting the concept of living labs in TVET and CET colleges that enable citizens to fulfill their potential and contribute meaningfully to the economy and society. And the third pillar will be implemented by the Department of Employment and Labor, and will focus around what they call the Job World Centers. And the establishment of Job World Centers is to assist companies and workers adjusting to changing labor market conditions, to provide persons with disabilities from School of Skills with practical skills to prepare them for the open labor market and entrepreneurship, and to assist the smooth transition from education to employment. DEL will establish and operate these job world centers. And they will serve as an integrated point for the transitioning of work seekers to meaningful employment activities. And my last slide, the departmental implementing partners, DBE, DHET, and DEL will implement the 3 pillars to support the overarching aims of creating a smooth pathway from education and training to employment opportunities across the breadth of South Africa for people of all ages, races, creeds, and abilities, and with a particular emphasis on the youth in an integrated and coordinated way. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to describe a little bit about what the Education for Employability program is doing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Schott. Your presentation, I believe, sets a solid foundation for today's discussion. And it also reminds us, right, of all the interlocking parts that are part of this conversation, all of which I'm sure the European Union will be glad to know are represented in this room over the next 3 days under the leadership of the Department of Basic Education. Speaking of which, please turn to your screens to watch a quick video of the history of the DBE and E-Cubed program.
Ending South Africa's youth unemployment crisis by preparing all learners for a changing world. Join the Department of Basic Education's E-Cubed program in activating entrepreneurship, employability, and education. Our learners' futures are in our hands, so let's bring project-based learning to South Africa's classrooms.
The vision of the DBE's Entrepreneurship, Employability and Education program is of a South African schooling system that creates an enabling and caring environment where learners feel confident, have autonomy and the agency to be innovative, creative, curious, take risks and learn from mistakes. Schools have a responsibility to sustain the environment for learning that happens before school and throughout the learner's schooling experience from grade R to 12. The aim is to keep learners motivated to embrace a positive attitude towards lifelong learning and to develop skills required to develop entrepreneurial mindsets.
We are calling on teachers to register for the project-based learning program and let's prepare our country's youth for their future world of work.
Baithuti ba kgopolo ya kgwebo ke baithuti ba ba lokišetšwa go lefatshe le le fetogago ba bile ba kgona go tshwaragana le dikgwetlho tse ba kopanang le tsona go itukišetša go bolela go ba le monagano wa kgwebo.
Dikgono tse di fitlhela bogolosegolo mo karolong ya ntlha ya tekano ya pholisi ya kharikhulamo le tekanyetso. Mokgwa o o gapisitsagosiwang ka teng kamano magareng a morutabana le morutwana le ka moo morutwana a rutiwang ka teng di botlhokwa mo go diriseng ditlhopho tse.
Die doel van hierdie program is om leerders te help om probleme te identifiseer en op te los. En ook om besluite te neem, effectief te werk as 'n individu of as deel van 'n span, om georganiseerd te wees, belangrike inligting te verstaan en dit ook wys te gebruik, na jouself en ander om te sien, 'n goeie begrip van die wêreld te hê en verstaan hoe 'n gesonde samelewing werk.
Oshalebeti i-E-Cubed program izosebenzisa i-project-based learning ukusiza ukukhulisa amakhono esizokhuluma nawo.
Jolene, itahlamisela ukukhetha ndlela leyi madyondzelo mayelana na projeke ya hambaneke na ntirho wa projeke kambe
yi ta tirhisiwa ku hetisisa tiphurojeke ku ya hi swilaveko swa xitatimende xa pholisi ya kharikhulamu na makambelelo lembe rin'wana na rin'wana.
Nkoka wa ku teka tiphurojeke va kaneta kharikhulamu yi thuta ka mintlhontlho eka vutivi ka vutivi ku rarula mathata a vuphilo ka fasa ka tlhantlho ya muvutichi.
Ku tirhisa mokgwa project based learning go fa morutwana tšhono ya go bua le go refosela dikakanyo le barutwana ba bangwe mo phaposiborutelo. Se se aga go itshepa le go itumedisa, go itse go fetisa le go ba thusa mo go itsholeng sentle mo botshelong morago ga dithuto tsa marematlou.
Ihlelo lomnyango wokufundisa indlela equity lisiza abotishela ukulungiselela imisebenzi yamaprojekthi afunwa yi-CAPS basebenzisa indlela yokufunda yakhelwa kumaprojekthi. Ukufunda ukuthwaya iprojekthi nokulinda amakhono abafanele babe nawo abafundi nokubanjela abotishela.
Balika singafunza njalo kwa na klasini. Kunameleka bana musingatishoma bajobada na kuphisa lokaringa mushimo wekafunza. Sitakatipita tendela na mushimo iyi. Kufunza ngoba wakabelana zibanda zokumana nawo. Kama hasha wafunza za klasi. Ulibadilika DBEQ.
Uqeqesho luyakhutshwa kuthi okanye ne-intanethi uqhubekeke kwindawo okuyo kunye nexesha lokuqala kwenkqubo. Uzawuqeqeshwa ngendlela yokusebenzisa inqonga ye-DBE Teacher Connect eliyofinyelelwa ngoWhatsApp.
Teacher Connect indlela yokutishela yokutfola sisekelo uqeqeshwa bese kunikezwe impiko yetuthuko.
Re tseba hore barutwana le batswadi ba lakatsa hore bana ba bona ba ikelele le ho ba le boitshepo, ba kgone ho nka taolo ya maphelo a bona, ba ne ba be le merero hodimo ha tsebo le bokgoni ba bona ha ba phethela sekolo.
Imagine a world in which all young people leave their school lives prepared to be solution-seeking active participants.
Our goal to introducing entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, and employability training in the national school curriculum is to create an entrepreneurial culture in South Africa by 2030, in which all school leavers are employable, study further, or equipped to start their own business in the future. Furthermore, it is to create a culture of empathy and social responsibility in which school leaders are actively concerned with South Africa's socio-economic problems on multiple levels. We know that children learn best when classrooms are socially interactive, purposeful, enjoyable, inspire curiosity, actively engaging, and enable learner autonomy. Hence the acronym SPECIAL, special.
We want our youth to be independent and contribute to their communities and society.
Thank you very much, and beautifully said in all, if not, I think most, if not all, actually, of our 11 official South African languages. And that's just only the beginning, right? So we want to now discuss the vision, or set the vision rather, for not just this conversation, but really the heart of the work that we're doing. And so I'm going to ask two guests to join me on stage, welcoming back Mr. Rabutapi, if you could please join me on stage, and also Mr. Teddy Blecher. If those two gentlemen could please join me on stage, and we will have a quick but very important conversation on DBE's EQ program from 2011 to present, as well as the shared journey ahead. Let's give them a round of applause as they come on stage.
Okay, thank you so much to my two guests. I think let's start where it starts, right? What has brought us here today, really? Anyone can go for this first question.
Mr. Robert Abisha, just give a little bit of the background. Back to 2011, it started with the former Deputy President, Halima Motlanthe, obviously very worried about the growing levels of youth unemployment in the country. Created a national task team as part of the the HRDC, Human Resources Development Council, and I was very fortunate to be involved in that task team, and we ended up analysing entrepreneurship and small business across all aspects of South Africa's education system, out of school youth, etc. And that was the foundations that ultimately led to the EQ'd initiative that we've heard about today. And as I think, as the Minister says, as we all know, we do have, unfortunately, a serious crisis in South Africa, with over 62% of youth between the ages of 18 to 24 being unemployed. But it just doesn't have to be like that. It absolutely can change. And as the Minister was saying, I think in a country with so much need and so many sectors, that is all about opportunity. There's opportunity everywhere, in every community, to start businesses, to start social enterprises, to create things. And this type of creation is a mindset development, and that's why I think the EU ambassador was talking about entrepreneurial mindset. And people make this mistake thinking that entrepreneurial mindset is that we're only trying to train entrepreneurs. Definitely we need more entrepreneurs in the country, and we need more successful entrepreneurs, but we need many more employed people in the country. And without an entrepreneurial mindset, unfortunately, people struggle to get a job or to keep a job. And what is an entrepreneurial mindset? It's all the things we know that any employer really needs from their own team, which is people who are creative, who are hardworking, who are used to being able to solve problems and come up with new ideas. And so everything that we know is needed to be employable, those are the same attributes you need actually to be entrepreneurial. And especially in an age of AI, where AI will decimate so many jobs, and we desperately need young people who can think of new creative ways of doing things.
Absolutely, I think you said that so well, right? That when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's not just the act or the activity of starting a business, but it's the attribute of creating value, and that is needed across all sectors. And so I'm going to go to Mr. Rabotaki. You spoke when you spoke earlier about the high unemployment that we're facing and the various things that the DBE has done, from the 3 streams model to the GC. Could you share a bit more about how this entrepreneurship education concept is really going to take off in context of 3 streams model and GC?
No, firstly, the successful implementation of the 3 streams model and the GBC program requires that the skills that are cultivated through the EQ program, those skills are critical in terms of ensuring that you are able then to integrate them as part of your 3 streams model, as part and parcel of your skills for a changing world. So that's where the intersection actually happens. So as education, we have to be agile. The way we learned in the old days, it's not the way our learners are learning now, because the context is changing. So we cannot, as an education system, fail to adapt, and we cannot fail to be responsive. And I think these interventions that we are talking about today should be seen within the context of us as education responding and ensuring that we address the social challenges that we have. Amongst them is the problem of youth unemployment. So by introducing programs such as the 3 streams model, is really to ensure that you don't produce learners who only are one-dimensional, but we've got to ensure that as a system we produce multiple skills that will help in responding to the needs of our economy. Currently we have a problem of a stagnant economy, low levels of skills. We've got to import some of the most basic of skills when we have youth who are there but don't have adequate skills. So we have a responsibility to really respond, and that's why we thought that through this process we can be able to institutionalize this response and bring other relevant partners on board. And we are very glad that when we made the call, there was a response that has brought us here today.
Yes, a resounding response. And I think just the way you explain that intersection is so important to say this is not another thing that is being added, but rather when we're talking about a child at grade 9 having a GEC certificate, or a child considering other options apart from our mainstream education, that they need the requisite skills in the first place to be able to make those decisions and to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And so let's talk about those competencies. You know, what are those competencies from an EQ point of view that are showing up as the most important? And how are we making progress, or what is our thinking around how these competencies are going to be developed?
Wonderful question. What we've learned has been completely fascinating, I think, to all of us involved in this work over the last 14 years, is that the same competencies you need, as I say, to be employable are the same as to be an entrepreneur. And what we found is that to develop these competencies, it's like brain connections have to happen, and it starts best from the youngest possible ages. And so the brain develops through repeated experiences when learners are challenged to solve problems, and they have to start using their brain to put things together, to work with other people, to negotiate, to dream together, to have passion. And a lot of these problems are activated when learners are solving real life problems in their communities that they care about, because South Africans have an incredible amount of empathy and emotional intelligence. People were talking about Ubuntu, and so it's in our culture. So what we found is if you give young people the opportunity to solve really important problems that they really care about, that activate that sense of caring, all of a sudden their thinking goes to a whole other level. Now, why is it very, very important? So, I mean, we're saying that entrepreneurial mindset is important for employability as well as for small business and entrepreneurship. Why is small business so important? And I think you heard from the EU Commissioner say that 99% of businesses in the EU are small businesses. In South Africa, 70% of all people who are feeding their families in the formal sector are in a small business under 50 people in size. If you add in the informal sector, over 90% of people are feeding their family outside of government grants or subsidies, etc. Over 90% are feeding their families through small businesses. Small businesses is the gold of any country. It's the absolute bedrock of employability, employment, job creation, innovation, etc. So it's absolutely essential that from a young age, we're starting to develop our learners with this kind of mindset so that later on, and not everybody, as we were discussing before here, not everyone is born to be an entrepreneur. But there are entrepreneurs, and like even if it's 1 in 10 or 2 in 10, and those people can launch and fly and employ employable people, and those employable people coming out of the school system, you can start to develop a very, very strong economy. And that's really what we're trying to do. So we're not changing the caps. As the Minister said, the curriculum is very stable. Yes. This development of this mindset is about practical education. It's a pedagogical approach. It's how we teach. Because when you and me went to school, and I went to school a long time ago, everything was up on the blackboard, and you have to get a textbook, and you just have to memorize. You have to get 80% for your test. Everything was about matric. How many distinctions or B's or C's are you going to get for matric? And what happens then, unfortunately, is you create a generation and generation after generation of parrots or puppets. Unfortunately, because people have just learned what other people have told them, they've written an exam, but they haven't learned how to think for themselves. That is all we're trying to do. But the CAPS is actually a marvelous curriculum. It's got a tremendous amount in it. What we're doing is activating through a pedagogical approach where youngest kids can play. They can play with Lego and games and things like that. All the kids solve real projects, and then what we find is that in the process of doing that and working with other people and solving these projects that you care about, you learn English, you learn maths, you learn your own language, you learn science, you learn computer science, you learn how to solve everything, because you're now doing stuff that you care about and the learners at the same time. So I hope that makes sense. It's a pedagogical, active approach. We're not changing the theoretical component of the CAPS. That's good enough.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yes, and I always make this example, as you said, of schooling, and I wasn't in school too long ago, but when I was in school, one of my favorite subjects was accounting, and we spent a lot of time memorizing our documentation from your source documents to then translating that to all your journals and then creating your statements, right? And so for all of us, the big thing was, I got my books to balance, I'm probably going to get a 90%, I'm happy. There was always that last question for 10 marks where you had to critically analyze the financial statement and help the CEO make a decision on something. Yeah. No one answered that question, you just wanted the 90%. But as soon as I stepped into the C8 degree adversity, I found that that one question is the entirety of the degree. That actually computers, our apps, if you use FNB Business Banking, are fully doing all of what we were taught to master in school. And actually that's not important at all, but it's actually the critical reasoning, the creativity, the value creation that's mattering. And so, exactly. And so I want you to expressly show us how this is playing out in subjects. When someone thinks of entrepreneurship, they think business studies or traditional schooling or accounting. But how is this actually, making explicit the things that are of value in any subject, and not just those commercial subjects that come to mind?
Yeah, okay. So basically, it's firstly about creation of an enabling environment within our schools. Because as you know that our schools are very bureaucratic in terms of our approach, create order in the classroom where debates are only about what the teacher sets on the table. So clearly all of that it's something that has to change. But then it starts, of course, with how we prepare our teachers. Exactly. That's where it has to start. And I think that's why it's important that a department such as the Department of Higher Education is here. This is my mind.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so departments such as Department of Higher Education and Training are here, so that how we prepare our teachers, that the mindset must change from there. Because now, although we are implementing it now, but we know that the majority of the teachers who are currently in the system is not how they were trained. So they are learning as they are implementing. If you look at programs that we run in the foundation, things like your play-based learning around issues of literacy, allowing learners to express themselves, allowing learners to actually innovate in every subject, allowing learners to interact, allowing them space to bring things like cell phones where they can be able to research on whatever new information that they want. So we've got to liberate, our classrooms so that they are not teacher-centered and they are overly controlled by what the teacher puts on the table. So that's the kind of transformation that we want to put so that we are able to align our classrooms appropriately. But of course, we know that we still have to sort out certain things in terms of our education system. I mean, if you have a class with 80 learners in there, it's gonna be really a challenge to try. So we need to also look at what additional support we provide, particularly to our teachers. And I think that initiatives such as your teacher assistance program, I think they are helping and they need to be sustained because to be successful, teachers will definitely need an additional hand because they need people who can guide these learners as they innovate and as they explore. So I think it's something that will evolve over time. We are still at the beginning stages, but with support that we have from our partners and with effective collaborations, we believe that that transformation will happen much quicker.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sorry, there we go. Yeah. Just to add to what Mr. Owatapi is saying is that I'll just use like an example in the curriculum setting. And what we found is that this works best if it's in all subjects, at every grade. The idea is to eventually have this in every classroom, in every school, in every district, in every province, in the whole of South Africa. But for example, Mrs. Wahida Carvalho, who is the Executive Director of the EQT Initiative, who was the Chief Director in the Department of Curriculum. So an example of an initiative I went to go visit with her was a legacy project done for grade 7 learners who finish in primary school. Now, you can just imagine that you're finishing primary school and you're excited to go into high school, but you're scared. We all remember going from primary school into high school. It's a huge shift. And what the project was, is it was a project that counted for marks, is that every learner had to work in groups in their schools in grade 7 to give something back to their primary school before they leave. So like a gift to the primary school. So that meant they had to go talk to the principal, they had to work in teams, they had to talk to parents, they had to talk to teachers. What does our school need? Do we need a soccer field? Do we need books in the library? Should we try to get a computer for the school? Can we help improve the feeding program? XYZ. And in the process of doing that, I went with Ms. Carvalho, we went to go visit a number of schools, and some of the most disadvantaged schools in various provinces. It made the hair stand up on the back of your neck, your excitement of how these kids had used their language skills, their math skills, communication skills, everything else. All their subjects came into play to do something meaningful for the school that they loved. And we were so deeply moved to see how these youngsters have got so much inside them, so much creativity, so much passion, so much excitement. And this is what this type of process of education does, is unlocks the learner. As Mr. Owatapi has said, the teacher is critical. The teacher is fundamental in the classrooms, and we've been overwhelmed by how teachers have embraced this approach that allowing their own kids in their classes to solve problems, to bring the learning to life, and so on. So it's this active pedagogy, and what we've seen is it works. And it keeps kids in school. We know one of our problems in South Africa is a lot of children drop out of high school in grade 10, 11, 12, etc., which is a tragedy for our country and the future of our country, we found that when learners are having fun, when they're loving life at school by doing something interesting that involves them, then dropout rates will go down. And marks will go up in maths, in language skills, etc., when kids are actually at the center of their own learning.
Yeah. You know, I think that just sums it up so well as we get to the end of this panel, is that children are already excited about the future. They are curious about the future. They have ideas about the future. And it's that teachers as well are actively advocating for ways that they can help their students. No teacher wants to stand in front of their learners and offer them an education that's not going to convert into an opportunity at the end of the day. You've heard teachers say, this is helping me manage a big classroom. This is helping me reach my learners in a way that's inclusive to learners who have special needs. And this is all of the wonderful things that we'll see even today on the stage. But I just want to ask in closing, in a few words, for you, as you know, I think a lot of people sitting in the room can feel quite stressed and quite anxious about what needs to be done. How do we keep in mind that picture of the excited, curious child who is waiting for the opportunity and the teacher who is willing and just wants to learn? How do we stay focused on that objective in the midst of all of the engagements and all of the, working things out that we have to do over the next few days?
I think that firstly, we need to communicate the successes more, so that even those teachers who have not yet been exposed to these approaches can see that indeed it works, and then teachers can be able, within the context of their own challenges, find innovative ways of actually bringing this up. So it's about effective communication. It's about ensuring that information and support is made available, so that if teachers, wherever they are, they want to be supported, they need to ask questions, they need to get guidance about what they need to do, that information should be readily available. So it's about institutionalizing the approach and the system, and making sure that as a system we are ready, to accommodate this. So I think those are some of the issues that we need to reflect on in terms of what are the practical things that we need to do to ensure that this is expanded to all our schools.
Thank you for that. Dr. Blecher?
Great, thank you very much. And I think just in conclusion, the first thing I want to emphasize, which I think Mr. Rabotaki said, the Minister, the EU Ambassador, etc., is the Ministry of Education, its role is to teach those 13 million kids sitting in classrooms, 14 million kids. They themselves are not job creators, okay? Job creation happens in the private sector. The private sector is absolutely critical. Civil society is absolutely critical. Department of Higher Education and Training, both from the academic point of view, TVETs, etc., absolutely critical. We have to have a collected, united goal as South Africa that we are going to reduce youth unemployment by 90-95% by 2030, 2035. We have to all work on it together. It has to be one goal, one dream, one vision, one mantra, one thing that we all go for, because no sector can do it by itself. That's the first thing. And so it is wonderful to see private sector stepping in and helping the school system, having ABSA here, having Ellen Gray Philanthropies, Savo Foundation. There are many, many players here, the European Union, all these people wanting to work together. That is what we need with a collective goal to reduce unemployment. I also want to add to Mr. Rapotapi's point to say we have had amazing successes already. EQ's been working on this now from 2018. We've got tried and tested. This is something that does work. We've tried it in so many classrooms now, in so many quintile schools, all across the country, in every single province. We've already reached over 1.6 million learners through their teachers that have had these experiences of entrepreneurial learning. We're supporting the teachers through this Teacher Connect platform that you spoke about earlier. Already over 1 million users are on that app, which is incredibly exciting, just using WhatsApp, helping teachers step by step with this process, helping train hundreds of thousands, over 500,000 teacher assistants using that same app. 200,000 started last week. There's some tremendous successes already. It's been overwhelming how the unions have supported this. The teacher unions, over 1,100 NATU union members have been trained as experts in this approach. So there are many, many examples here already of this is tried and tested. People are open to it. It's about scaling it up, as Mr. Ramotapi said. And this has to become one thing that we all go towards, because we have to, for the future of South Africa. I just want to emphasize again and again, we mustn't think that foundational learning isn't imperative to this, but this strengthens foundational learning. Because like you say, when you became this reborn accountant and you had studied everything by memory, I found the same thing as an actuary. We learned everything, we write all these exams, etc. You get out to the real world, technology does all of that stuff. All that matters in the real world. Can you work with other people? Can you solve problems? Are you creative? Can you think for yourself? Do you care enough? Are you passionate? Do you have leadership? Those things are not against learning English and maths. English, maths, those things are fundamental, but they go hand in hand. When you bring learning to life, now all of a sudden maths makes sense. Because if I have to buy a computer for my school, I have to understand numbers. If I have to fix the field in the school, numbers make sense. So it's about integrating learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. It's, as you say, certainly about reinforcing the curriculum intent, right? Because we're saying, and we've seen this, I've seen learners who were history students that were struggling with their South African history in particular, and the teacher gave them a debate. And what then happened is they opened up their textbook, they opened up supplementary readings like the Constitution, and suddenly these learners were having rich and robust discussion about the liberation movement. The same learners who had failed the test a week earlier. And so it is reinforcing the curriculum intent, and that's why it's so critical to achieve. So anyway, what's a vision, right? A vision is a massive thing that is so difficult to comprehend, but that lights up everyone with passion. And here we got two key ideas, that we have to come out of here with something that can be institutionalized, and that secondly, it has to obliterate youth unemployment. So I don't know about you, but that for me is overwhelming. And so I think with that, we're very lucky to be going for a 30-minute tea break. Please enjoy your tea and coffee. Begin to have conversations among yourself. Begin to network. And of course, prepare for the next segment, which will be opened by our learners, so you don't want to miss that. Please enjoy your lunch. Your tea. Your tea. What's your lunch here?